I didn't think a half sandwich could trigger a military takedown. I was standing in the cold, gray drizzle outside Camp Ravenhill when I saw him, an old man sitting on a bench like he'd been forgotten by time itself. I had one half of a turkey sandwich left in my pocket, slightly crushed from drills. I handed it to him without thinking. He looked at me. His eyes, clearer than mine had been in months, and said, "You knew Mandy Ruiz, didn't you?" My heart stopped. "She didn't fall during that training accident," he continued, slipping me a torn envelope. "The general behind her death? He'll get what's coming. But not without you." Inside was a note. 3 numbers written in tight black ink. A time, a date, a location. That was the moment I realized. I had just stepped into a war no one had the courage to fight. And I wasn't ready, not for the secrets. Not for the betrayal. Not for the part of me I'd have to leave behind. The rain had been falling steadily for 3 days at Camp Ravenhill. Not the kind that washes anything clean, but the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there. Kind of like grief, 37 days. That's how long it had been since they told me Mandy was gone. 37 days of walking past her empty bunk, of catching myself turning to tell her something, of waking up in cold sweats from dreams where she was still falling. "Torres, get your head out of the clouds." Sergeant Miller's voice cut through my thoughts like a knife. I snapped to attention, realizing I'd been staring at the firing range target without pulling the trigger for who knows how long. "Yes, Sergeant." "Sorry, Sergeant." His expression softened just slightly. Everyone knew Mandy and I had been inseparable since basic. We'd called each other battle buddies, but that term never quite captured it. She was the sister I never had. "Look, Torres," he said, lowering his voice. "I get it, but it's been over a month. Accidents happen in training. You need to move on." I nodded, but the words felt hollow. Accidents. That's what the official report said. A training accident during a night exercise. Equipment failure? Tragic but unavoidable, except Mandy never made mistakes with equipment. Never. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Drills, maintenance, paperwork, the mind-numbing routine that was supposed to be comforting in its predictability. By lunchtime, I couldn't breathe inside the mess hall. Too many memories of Mandy's laugh cutting through the chatter, her terrible jokes, the way she'd save her dessert until the very end like a kid. I grabbed a sandwich and headed out to the perimeter fence, needing space. That's when I saw him, the old man on the bench just outside the public access area. Hunched shoulders, weather-beaten face, but with a military posture you never really lose. His clothes were worn but clean. A veteran, I could tell right away. Something about his solitary figure reminded me of myself. Alone with thoughts no one else wanted to hear. I approached the fence. "Afternoon, sir." He looked up, squinting against the drizzle. "Afternoon, Corporal." I hadn't said my rank. But then, it was right there on my uniform. "You look like you could use this more than me," I said, passing half my sandwich through the chain link. He took it with dignity, not gratitude. That's how I knew he was definitely military. "Appreciate it." I was about to walk away when he said my name. My full name, Rachel Torres. I froze. "How do you—" "You knew Mandy Ruiz, didn't you?" The world tilted. No one outside the base talked about Mandy anymore. The news cycle had moved on after a brief, tragic training accident headline. Just another soldier lost in the line of duty. Not even combat duty. "Just training. Who are you?" I managed. "Name's Thomas Granger. Tommy. Used to be Master Sergeant until they decided I wasn't anymore." His eyes never left mine. "She didn't fall during that training accident. My training kicked in. This could be anyone. A conspiracy theorist, a journalist looking for a story, a security test. Sir, I need to get back to my duties. The general behind her death. He'll get what's coming. But not without you. I should have walked away. Should have reported this immediately. Instead, I stood there in the rain as he slipped a torn envelope through the fence. "I knew your father in Desert Storm," he added quietly. "He was a good man. Honest man. I think you're the same. My father had died when I was 15. Heart attack. I joined the army partly because of him. How did you—" "Friday. 1900 hours. Rusty's Diner in town? Come alone or don't come at all." He stood up, tucking the remaining sandwich carefully into his pocket. "Your choice, Corporal. But choose carefully. Some doors can't be unclosed." I watched him walk away, the envelope burning in my palm. Inside was a note with 3 numbers, 7 WAG, 1015, 43, a time, a date. A A location. I shoved it into my pocket just as Major Lauren Bishop rounded the corner. Torres. She nodded crisply. Tall, sharp-featured, with intelligent eyes that never seemed to miss anything. Everything all right? Yes, ma'am. Just getting some air. Her gaze flicked to the retreating figure of Tommy, then back to me. Air's good. Clears the head. She paused. Grief clouds judgment, Corporal. Remember your training. Yes, ma'am. As she walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling she'd seen more than she let on. Major Bishop had always been fair but distant. Respected but not particularly liked. One of the few high-ranking women on base, she kept to herself. Ran a tight ship. That night, I lay awake in my bunk, the envelope hidden beneath my mattress. Logic told me to report it. Duty demanded it. But something else, something that felt like Mandy whispering in my ear, made me hold back. I remembered our last conversation. 3 days before the accident. Rach, does anything about these night drills seem off to you? She'd asked, keeping her voice low. Off how? The scheduling? The locations. The fact that half the logs disappear the next day? I'd laughed it off. You're paranoid. Probably just brass changing their minds. You know how they are. She hadn't laughed back. Maybe. Or maybe there's something happening they don't want documented. 3 days later, she was dead. Equipment failure, they said. Her harness had snapped during a rappelling exercise. In the dark. With no witnesses except the training officer, who conveniently couldn't see details from his position. I rolled over, punching my pillow into shape. Mandy had been meticulous about her equipment. She checked everything twice, sometimes 3 times. It was a running joke between us, her obsessive safety checks, my more casual approach. The thought hit me like a truck. If anyone was going to have an equipment failure, it should have been me, not her. Sleep wouldn't come. At 0200 hours, I slipped out of bed and retrieved the note. The date was this Friday. The time, 7 p.m., but what was 43? I pulled out my phone, careful to shield the light. A quick search of the area around Camp Ravenhill brought it up. Highway 43 ran past Rusty's Diner, the only all-night place within 20 miles of base. It was a meeting point. By morning, I'd made my decision. I would go. Just to listen. If this Tommy was crazy, I'd walk away. If he was dangerous, I'd report him, but if he knew something about Mandy, something that explained the knot of doubt I'd carried for 37 days, I had to hear it. What I didn't know then was that this decision would unravel everything I thought I knew about the Army, about loyalty, about justice, and about myself. Friday arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after days of rain. The sun broke through, casting long shadows across the base as afternoon drills wound down. I'd requested evening leave earlier in the week, standard procedure for going into town. No questions asked, no eyebrows raised. At least that's what I thought until Major Bishop appeared beside me in the locker room. Plans tonight, Torres? Her tone was conversational, but her eyes were sharp. I kept my face neutral. Just dinner in town, ma'am. Need a break from mess hall food. She studied me for a moment too long. Rusty's has decent pie. Avoid the meatloaf. Then more quietly. Be careful out there. Towns near military bases can be complicated. Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me with the unsettling feeling that she knew exactly where I was going. And maybe why. I changed into civilian clothes, jeans, boots, a simple gray Henley. Nothing that screamed military, but nothing that hid it either. The envelope remained in my pocket, its corners worn from constant handling. The drive to town took 20 minutes along a winding road flanked by Colorado pines. Camp Ravenhill sat nestled in the mountains, isolated enough for specialized training but close enough to civilization. For weekend passes to matter, Rusty's diner looked exactly as expected. A chrome-sided relic with neon signs and windows that had witnessed decades of secrets. At 18:45 hours, I parked across the street watching. Military training dies hard. I counted 4 vehicles besides mine. A waitress's beater car, a local sheriff's cruiser, an old pickup, and a nondescript sedan that screamed government issue to my trained eye. Tommy Granger sat alone in a corner booth nursing a coffee. He wore the same jacket as before, but with a cleaner shirt. His eyes met mine the moment I walked in. No surprise there. He'd spotted me watching from across the street. Once military, always military. Corporal? He nodded as I slid into the booth opposite him. Wasn't sure you'd come. Not sure I should have, I replied. You've got 5 minutes to convince me I'm not wasting my time with a crazy person. A waitress approached, pot in hand. Coffee, hun? I nodded, and she filled my mug before disappearing behind the counter. Only then did I notice the slight bulge beneath Tommy's jacket. He was armed. You carrying? I asked quietly. 30 years in service, 10 years on the streets. Wouldn't be alive without protection. His weathered hands wrapped around his mug. But that's not why we're here. Why are we here then? And how did you know Mandy? I never met Mandy Ruiz, he said, surprising me. But I know what happened to her. The accident wasn't an accident. His voice hardened. Just like what happened to Specialist Elena Rivera in 2022 wasn't an accident. Or Lieutenant Tanya Williams in 2023. Or Private First Class Jessica Chen 6 months ago. A chill ran through me. What are you talking about? Tommy reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a worn manila folder. 3 women, all under General Andrew Maddox's command. All died in training accidents after filing unofficial complaints about irregularities in night operations. I stared at the folder but didn't touch it. If you're suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you. His eyes bore into mine. General Maddox is running unauthorized operations out of Camp Ravenhill. Black Ops. Off the books. The kind the Pentagon officially doesn't know about, and unofficially funds anyway. That's a serious accusation. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold. It's the truth. And your friend found out? How would you know that? I challenged. You just said you never met her. Tommy leaned forward. Because I've been watching Maddox for 5 years. Ever since Syria, I served under him. 2nd Battalion Special Forces Group. We were supposed to be training locals, nothing more. Then orders came down for an operation that wasn't in any official briefing. 8 civilians died. Children among them. His hands trembled slightly, the only crack in his otherwise steely demeanor. I filed a report. Next thing I know, I'm being investigated for dereliction of duty. Drugs appear in my quarters. Witnesses change their stories. Dishonorable discharge followed. Wife couldn't handle the shame, left with our son. He took a sip of coffee. Took me 3 years of living in shelters before I started putting it together. Maddox doesn't leave loose ends. And you think Mandy was a loose end? The words felt like acid in my mouth. I know she was. He slid the folder closer to me. Page 3. Training logs from the night she died. Against my better judgment, I opened the folder. Inside were photocopies, printouts, handwritten notes, a patchwork investigation conducted by a man with no resources but his own determination. Page 3 showed a training schedule. Night rappelling exercise, 2,200 hours. Mandy's name was there, along with 5 others. But something was off. This isn't the right location, I said, frowning. They told us the accident happened at Training Site C. This says Site F. Site F doesn't officially exist, Tommy replied. It's off map. Part of the old mining complex that predates the base. I shook my head. That's not possible. I would have known if, would you? His voice was gentle now, almost pitying. Think, Corporal. How many times has your unit been separated for specialized training? How many nights has Maddox's team taken select soldiers for drills that nobody talks about the next day? The cold feeling in my stomach spread. Mandy's words echoed in my head. The scheduling. The locations. The fact that half the logs disappear the next day. What was she involved in? I whispered. Not involved. Investigating. Tommy tapped the folder. Mandy was smart. She noticed the patterns. Started keeping her own records. Digital and paper. How do you know all this? My training screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, possibly treasonous. But something deeper, the part that had never believed the official story, leaned in. Because I'm not the only one watching, Tommy replied. There's a network of us. Ex-military who saw too much. Current personnel who know something's wrong but can't speak up. And one person on the inside who's been gathering evidence for years. Who? He shook his head. Not yet. You're not ready for that. First, you need to decide where you stand. The diner door chimed. A man in a polo shirt and khakis walked in, taking a seat at the counter. Nothing remarkable about him except the military haircut he tried to disguise with slightly longer sides. Tommy noticed, too. His posture shifted imperceptibly. We've got company. Base security, civilian clothes. How can you tell? Same way I can tell you've got a knife in your right boot and you're left-handed. He stood up slowly. Take the folder. Read it tonight. If you want out, burn it and forget we met. If you want the truth about your friend, about what really happens at Ravenhill, meet me Sunday, same time. Wilson Creek Bridge. He left money on the table and walked out, nodding to the man at the counter as he passed. The man waited 30 seconds, then followed. I sat there, the folder like a live grenade in my hands. Part of me wanted to leave it, report the encounter, return to the relative safety of following orders and believing what I was told. But Mandy's face flashed before me. Her voice, her laugh, the way she'd looked me in the eye that last night and said, "Something's not right. Rach. I can feel it." I slipped the folder into my jacket and left money for my untouched coffee. Whatever war I'd just stepped into, there was no retreating now. The drive back to base was a blur. Every shadow on the mountain road seemed to hide a threat, every pair of headlights a potential pursuer. The manila folder sat on the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate. When I reached the security checkpoint, Specialist Garcia waved me through with barely a glance. Normal procedure for returning personnel on weekend pass. But nothing felt normal anymore. "Everything all right, Torres?" he asked, noticing my white-knuckle grip on the steering wheel. "Yeah, just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Town was dead tonight." He nodded, already focusing on the next vehicle. I drove to the parking area, shut off the engine, and sat in darkness for several minutes, trying to steady my breathing. The folder seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. I needed somewhere private to examine it. The barracks were out of the question. Too many eyes, too many questions. The library would be closed at this hour. That left one option: the maintenance shed behind the motor pool. Mandy and I had discovered it made a perfect hideout months ago, when we wanted to share care packages from home without having to give everyone a taste. The base was quiet as I made my way across it. Folder hidden inside my jacket. A few soldiers milled about the recreation center. Night training was happening on the far field. Otherwise, most people were either in town or already settled in for the night. The shed smelled of motor oil and dust. I switched on my phone's flashlight, wedged myself between a shelving unit and a stack of tires, and finally opened the folder completely. What I found turned my blood to ice. Personnel files for the 3 women Tommy had mentioned. Training schedules with locations that didn't match official records. Medical reports with inconsistencies highlighted in Tommy's cramped handwriting. Surveillance photos of meetings between General Maddox and men in civilian clothes. Faces circled. Dates noted. And most disturbing, a partial transcript of a recording. Dated 3 days before Mandy died. MR. I've noticed discrepancies in the supply requisitions. Sir, Jenna M. That's above your clearance? Corporal MR. With respect, sir. Equipment being diverted from our unit affects our readiness. Jen M. Are you questioning my command, Ruiz? MR. No, sir. Just trying to understand the protocol. Jenner M. The protocol is you follow orders. Some things happen on a need-to-know basis. MR. Yes, sir. And if these things involve potentially unauthorized operations? Pause, Jenner M. Careful, Corporal. Curiosity can be dangerous in our line of work. Accidents happen. My hands trembled so badly I had to set the paper down. I'd known Mandy's voice my entire Army career. I could hear her saying those words, professional but persistent. And I could imagine all too clearly the cold threat in Maddox's response. A note was paper-clipped to the transcript. Original recording missing. Source compromised after R's death. Partial backup survived. I dug deeper. Tommy had compiled a thorough dossier on Maddox, his career trajectory, his deployments, commendations, and several redacted complaints that had been buried in the system. The pattern was unmistakable. Wherever Maddox went, rules bent. Unusual accidents occurred and questions disappeared. At the back of the folder was a list of names. Current and former military personnel who had served under Maddox. Some were crossed out, dead or disappeared according to Tommy's notation. Some had question marks, potential allies or compromised. One name near the bottom caught my eye. Major Lauren Bishop. No annotation. No question mark. Nothing to indicate which side she might be on. A noise outside the shed sent me scrambling to gather the papers. Footsteps crunched on gravel, paused, then continued past. I waited until they faded before allowing myself to breathe again. Dawn was approaching. I needed to get back to the barracks before morning roll call. I tucked the folder into my jacket and slipped out of the shed, careful to leave everything as I'd found it. Sleep was impossible. I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, the folder hidden beneath my mattress. Every creak in the barracks, every movement from my bunkmates made me tense. By morning, I was exhausted but wired, my mind racing through possibilities. If Tommy was telling the truth, then Mandy had been murdered for asking questions. If he was right about the pattern, I could be next merely for having this information. But if he was wrong, if this was some elaborate conspiracy theory from a bitter ex-soldier with a grudge, then I was betraying my oath by even considering his claims. Sunday training was light, mostly paperwork and equipment maintenance. I kept my head down, avoided conversation, and tried not to flinch when General Maddox himself visited our section for a routine inspection. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair, impeccable posture, and the kind of commanding presence that filled a room. Every decoration on his uniform had been earned. His record was legendary. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, the kind of officer younger soldiers aspired to become. Torres? He nodded as he passed my workstation. How's that new targeting system working out? Fine, sir, I managed, unable to meet his eyes. Just finished calibration yesterday. Good. We need our best on this. He clapped me on the shoulder. Your father would be proud. My head snapped up at that. How did he know about my father? We'd never discussed my family. The casual reference felt like a warning. As he moved on, I caught Major Bishop watching me from across the room. Her expression revealed nothing, but she held my gaze a beat longer than necessary before turning away. By afternoon, I'd made my decision. I would meet Tommy again, not because I believed him completely, but because I needed more. More evidence, more certainty, more understanding of what I was potentially walking into. At 18:30 hours, I signed out for evening leave again. The same guard, a different lie about meeting friends in town. This time, I felt eyes on my back as I walked to my car. Wilson Creek Bridge was a small stone structure spanning a narrow but deep ravine about 5 miles from base. Isolated with good visibility in all directions. A tactical choice for a meeting, both secure and with multiple escape routes. Tommy was already there when I arrived, leaning against the railing, watching the water rush below. No sign of the man from the diner who had followed him. You came, he said, not turning around. Wasn't sure you would. I'm not sure I should have, I replied, keeping my distance. But I read the folder. Now he faced me. And it's circumstantial. Connections that might be coincidences. Patterns that might be paranoia. I took a deep breath. But the transcript. That was Mandy. Those were her words, her way of speaking. I told you. We have sources. Who? Who's providing this information? Tommy shook his head. Not yet. You haven't committed. What exactly am I committing to? Treason? Conspiracy? Career suicide? Justice, he said simply. For Mandy, for the others. For the soldiers Maddox is using as pawns in his private war games. A bitter laugh escaped me. Justice? From where I'm standing, you're asking me to trust a dishonorably discharged vet with a vendetta against my commanding officer. Based on what? Some papers that could be fabricated? A conversation that could be scripted? His face hardened. You think I want this life? Living in shelters, watching my back, cut off from my family? You think this is about revenge? He stepped closer. This is about duty. The real kind. The kind they talk about in those recruitment videos, but don't actually want you to practice when it becomes inconvenient. Even if everything you've shown me is true, what can I possibly do about it? I'm a corporal. Maddox is a decorated general with connections all the way up the chain. You can be our eyes inside, Tommy said. Confirm what we suspect. Help us find the evidence we need. Evidence that can't be ignored or buried. By spying on my own unit? On my commanding officers? By honoring your oath to defend the Constitution against enemies foreign and domestic. His voice softened. Mandy was doing exactly that when she died. The mention of her name hit me like a physical blow. I turned away, staring down at the rushing water below. This wasn't what I'd signed up for. I'd joined to serve my country, to honor my father's memory, to be part of something greater than myself. Not to become entangled in shadow games and accusations against decorated officers. But then again, neither had Mandy. I need proof, I said finally. Real proof. Not circumstantial evidence, not patterns, not transcripts, without recordings. Something I can see with my own eyes that tells me this isn't just a vendetta. Tommy nodded slowly. Fair enough. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. This contains footage from a security camera at Site F from the night Mandy died. It's corrupted, deliberately, but portions are still viewable. It shows her with two men who weren't supposed to be on base that night. Men who work for a private military contractor called Blackridge Security. I took the drive, my fingers numb. How did you get this? Our source inside. Tommy checked his watch. I've stayed too long already. Review that somewhere secure. If you want in, leave a note under the east bench at the bus stop in town. One word, yes or no. We'll contact you. He turned to go, then paused. One more thing. Watch Major Bishop. She's not what she seems. What does that mean? Whose side is she on? That's the question, isn't it? He disappeared into the growing darkness, leaving me alone on the bridge with a flash drive that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I had no idea then that within 24 hours, everything would change. That the choice I was agonizing over would be made for me in the most brutal way possible, and that Major Lauren Bishop would be the one to make it. Monday morning dawned with military precision. 0500 hours. Réveil. 0530 physical training, 0700 breakfast. The routine that had once been comforting now felt like a charade. A carefully choreographed performance hiding something darker beneath. The flash drive burned a hole in my pocket all day. I couldn't risk accessing it on any base computer. Too many monitoring systems, too many ways to trace it back to me. I needed a secure, offline system. My opportunity came during afternoon maintenance shifts. Lieutenant Cooper assigned me to inventory the communications equipment storage, a windowless room filled with laptops, radios, and assorted tech. Most of it outdated, but kept as backup. Perfect. Take your time, Torres, Cooper said. Full diagnostic on each unit. I need the report by Thursday. 3 days. More than enough time to find a way to view the contents of the drive. I found an older model laptop that wouldn't automatically connect to the base network when powered on. Setting it up between two tall shelving units, I booted it, disabled all wireless capabilities, and inserted the drive. A single video file. Timestamp 22/17, the night Mandy died. The footage was indeed corrupted, sections freezing, jumping, dissolving into digital noise. But what remained was clear enough. A section of tunnel-like corridor I didn't recognize. Bare rock walls reinforced with metal supports. Definitely not standard base construction. Mandy appeared in frame, walking purposefully, clipboard in hand. She paused at what looked like a supply cache, checking something off her list. Two men in tactical gear but no military insignia entered from the opposite end of the corridor. They spoke briefly, no audio in the footage. Then Mandy showed them something on the clipboard. One man made a call on a radio. Mandy's posture changed, from professional to alert, possibly alarmed. The footage jumped, several seconds missing. When it resumed, one man had Mandy by the arm. She was resisting, trying to pull away. The other man checked his watch, said something. Then the screen went black. The next readable segment showed an empty corridor. Timestamp 23:42, nearly an hour and a half later. My hands shook as I ejected the drive. This wasn't definitive proof of murder, but it was enough to confirm that Tommy wasn't completely delusional. Mandy had been somewhere she shouldn't have been, with people who shouldn't have been there, the very night she died. I powered down the laptop and restored it to its original position, then continued the inventory as if nothing had happened. My mind raced with questions. What was Site F? Why were private contractors there? What had Mandy seen that warranted her death? As I worked mechanically through the equipment check, the storage room door opened. Major Bishop stepped in, closing it behind her. Torres, she said, her voice neutral. Lieutenant Cooper said I'd find you here. I snapped to attention. Yes, ma'am. At ease. She walked slowly along the shelves, examining the equipment. How's the inventory coming along? On schedule, ma'am. She nodded, continuing her inspection. You've been taking a lot of trips into town lately. My pulse quickened. Just need some space, ma'am. Since Mandy? Of course. She turned to face me directly. Grief is a powerful motivator. It can drive people to seek answers, to look for meaning in tragedy. Something in her tone made me freeze. Did she know? Had I been followed last night? Sometimes, she continued, those answers lead to more questions. Questions that might be dangerous to ask. I'm not sure I follow, ma'am. Major Bishop moved closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Old tunnel systems beneath a military base would make an excellent location for unofficial operations, wouldn't they? Especially if most personnel don't even know they exist. My blood ran cold. She knew, somehow she knew what I'd just watched. The question, she continued, maintaining eye contact, is whether those operations are sanctioned black ops, or something else entirely. I remained silent, uncertain whether she was testing me, threatening me, or something else entirely. Corporal, Torres, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Her eyes never left mine. Have you been in contact with Thomas Granger? Denial would be pointless. Yes, ma'am. She nodded, as if confirming something to herself. Did he give you a storage device of any kind? I hesitated only a moment. Yes, ma'am. I need that device, Corporal. May I ask why, ma'am? Because it contains incomplete information that could lead you to make dangerous assumptions and potentially catastrophic decisions. She held out her hand. The drive, please. Every instinct screamed not to trust her. Tommy's warning echoed in my head. Watch Major Bishop. She's not what she seems, but what choice did I have? She'd caught me red-handed. Refusing a direct order would end any possibility of finding the truth. I reached into my pocket and produced the flash drive. She took it, examining it briefly before pocketing it. Thank you for your honesty, Corporal. Report to my office at 2100 hours tonight. Tell no one. Yes, ma'am. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Torres, have you made any decisions? Based on what Granger showed you, any communications I should know about? The note. She was asking if I'd left a response for Tommy. No, ma'am. I was still processing. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. Good. That's good. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with inventory sheets and racing thoughts. For the rest of the day, I moved through my duties like a robot, hyper-aware of every glance, every conversation around me. Was Major Bishop reporting me to Maddox right now? Was she part of whatever had happened to Mandy? Or was she, as Tommy's uncertainty suggested, playing a different game altogether? By 20-30 hours, I'd convinced myself I was walking into a trap. Major Bishop's office was in the administration building, isolated after hours, perfect for an unfortunate accident or a fabricated security incident that would discredit or remove me. Still, I went. Partly from ingrained obedience to the chain of command. Partly because I needed answers more than I needed safety. The administration building was dimly lit, most offices dark. Major Bishop's light was on, door closed. I knocked precisely at 2100 hours. Enter. She sat behind her desk, the flash drive connected to her laptop. No one else was present. No security. Detail. No General Maddox waiting to arrest me for espionage. Close the door, Corporal. I did as instructed, remaining at attention. Sit down, she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. This conversation never happened. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. She turned her laptop to face me. On screen was the same footage I'd viewed earlier, but cleaner, more complete. I've restored some of the corrupted sections. Watch. The missing segments filled in critical gaps. Mandy discovering something in the supply cache that alarmed her. The men grabbing her when she tried to leave. A third man entering, face obscured but bearing general stars on his collar. Maddox. A brief but heated exchange. Mandy being escorted from the tunnel not by force, but with clear tension. The timestamp. Jumping forward not due to corruption but deliberate editing. This doesn't show her death, I said, processing what I'd seen. No, Major Bishop agreed, but it shows she was involved in something classified, potentially against her will, shortly before she died. Who are you, ma'am? Really? She closed the laptop. Someone who's been investigating General Maddox for 2 years. Someone who was sent here specifically for that purpose. Military intelligence? In a manner of speaking. She leaned forward. Maddox has been running unauthorized operations through black sites like this one for years. Weapons testing, specialized training for mercenaries, intelligence gathering outside official channels. But why? He's a decorated officer with a legitimate command. Power, money, the thrill of operating without oversight. Her expression hardened. and access to technologies the Pentagon has explicitly forbidden for deployment. The room seemed to tilt. What technologies? That's what Mandy discovered. She was assigned to inventory supplies for what she thought was a standard training exercise. Instead, she found prototype weaponry that had been officially scrapped due to ethical concerns about potential civilian casualties. My mind flashed to Tommy's story about Syria. 8 civilians dead in an unauthorized operation, so Mandy was killed to keep her quiet, I said, the words bitter in my mouth. Mandy was killed because she did exactly what you're doing now. She trusted the wrong person. Major Bishop's eyes held mine. She came to me just like Granger came to you. But someone else was watching. Someone who reported back to Maddox. Who? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Who betrayed her? Major Bishop shook her head. I don't know for certain. That's what makes this so dangerous. Maddox has eyes and ears throughout the base. People who owe him favors, people who believe in his cause, people who are simply afraid. And what about you? How do I know you're not one of them? The question came out more boldly than I intended, but I couldn't take it back. To my surprise, she smiled, a small, tight expression that didn't reach her eyes. You don't. That's the problem with Shadow Wars, Torres. It's hard to know which shadow to trust. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small device, placing it between us. It looked like a standard military radio, but smaller, more compact. Signal jammer, she explained. Creates white noise for any listening devices within 20 feet. Still, we should keep this brief. Why show me this now? Why take the risk? Because Granger is about to make a move, and I need to know if you're with him. Her gaze was unwavering. He's planning to go public with what he knows. Incomplete? Circumstantial evidence that will cause a momentary scandal but ultimately be discredited. Maddox will weather it, and anyone connected to the allegations will disappear. Like Mandy, I said quietly. Like Mandy, she agreed. Like the others before her. I leaned back, trying to process everything. So you want me to stop him? To warn him off? I want you to tell him to wait. Tell him there's another player in the game who has access to better evidence. Evidence that can't be buried or denied. You. She nodded. I've been building a case for 2 years, gathering intel, tracking financials, documenting Maddox's movements and contacts. I'm close, very close, to having enough to take to the Pentagon's Inspector General. But I need more time. How much time? 2 weeks, maybe 3. I studied her face, searching for signs of deception. And if I don't trust you? If I think this is a trap to identify Granger's network? Then people will die for nothing. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. Maddox will continue operating, and more soldiers like Mandy will be sacrificed when they ask the wrong questions. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. Trust a major I barely knew, or trust a homeless veteran with a personal vendetta. Both had shown me evidence. Both claimed to want justice. Either could be manipulating me. What exactly do you want me to do? I asked finally. Meet with Granger. Tell him you're in, but that he needs to hold off on any public moves. Tell him. There's someone inside the command structure working toward the same goal. She pushed a folded piece of paper across the desk. Give him this. It's proof of my involvement and my progress. I took the paper without unfolding it. And then? Then you become our bridge. You tell me what he's planning, and you tell him what I need. Limited information, compartmentalized, so if either side is compromised, the damage is contained. You're asking me to be a double agent. I'm asking you to be exactly what you are, a soldier who wants justice for her friend. Major Bishop's expression softened slightly. Mandy trusted you above everyone else on this base. That means something to me. The mention of Mandy's trust hit home. She had trusted me, and I'd brushed off her concerns, told her she was being paranoid. I hadn't been there when she needed me most. I'll do it, I said finally. But I need something in return. What's that? The truth about how she died. Not the official report. What really happened. Major Bishop was silent for a long moment. I don't know for certain, but I believe she was taken to Site F after what you saw in that footage. Questioned about what she'd discovered, who she'd told. When they were satisfied she'd acted alone, they staged the repelling accident the next night. So she was already dead when they reported the accident? The thought made me sick, most likely. The equipment failure was cover, nothing more. I closed my eyes briefly, imagining Mandy's final hours. Had she been afraid? Had she thought of me? Wondered why I hadn't believed her? One more question, I said, opening my eyes. Why does Tommy, Granger, think you might be compromised? He specifically warned me about you. Because I've had to maintain my cover, make decisions that seem to support Maddox. And because 3 months ago, someone leaked information about a potential informant in Maddox's inner circle. 2 officers were transferred immediately. I remained. She shrugged. From the outside, that looks suspicious. It did, but her explanation made sense. I'll meet Granger tomorrow, I decided. I'd already planned to leave him a note at the bus stop bench. Good. Remember, limited information. Don't tell him about this meeting specifically. Just that you found an ally inside who's building a case. She stood, indicating our time was up. Report back to me the same way as today. Request maintenance inventory duty, and I'll find you there. As I rose to leave, she added, Be careful, Torres. Trust is a luxury we can't afford right now. Question everything, including me. Back in my barracks, I lay awake, turning the conversation over in my mind. Major Bishop's warning to question everything left me in an impossible position. If I couldn't trust her and I couldn't fully trust Tommy, who could I trust? The answer came unbidden. Mandy. I could trust what Mandy had discovered, what she had died for. Following her path might be dangerous, but it was the only way to honor her memory. The next morning, I rose before dawn and requested a pre-breakfast town run, a common enough occurrence that no eyebrows were raised. The note I left under the east bench at the bus stop was simple. Yes, need to talk. Urgent. I added the time and location of a coffee shop 2 towns over, less likely to be watched than anywhere in the immediate vicinity of the base. Throughout the day, I felt eyes on me. Specialist Diaz, who barely spoke to anyone, suddenly wanted to chat during lunch. Lieutenant Cooper found reasons to check my work repeatedly. Even General Maddox himself appeared during afternoon training, observing from a distance. Paranoia or surveillance? Impossible to tell. By evening, my nerves were frayed. I needed to appear normal while feeling anything but. I joined a card game in the rec room, laughed at jokes I didn't hear, and pretended my world hadn't been shattered twice in 3 days. When my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Package received. Delivery confirmed for tomorrow, 1400 Tommy, acknowledging my note and confirming the meeting. I deleted the message immediately. Sleep came in fits and starts that night, punctuated by dreams of Mandy falling. But in my dreams, she was calling my name as she disappeared into darkness. I'd reach for her, only to find General Maddox holding my arm, his grip like iron. I woke at 0400, drenched in sweat. Rather than try for more sleep, I dressed and headed to the gym. Physical exertion was the only thing that might quiet my mind. The base was eerily silent at that hour, the sky still dark. As I rounded the corner toward the gym, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Major Bishop. Change of plans, she said without preamble. You're being reassigned. Why? Special training unit, effective 0800, Maddox's orders. Her expression was unreadable. This could be good or very, very bad. He suspects something? Maybe, or he's recruiting. Either way, it means you'll have access to areas of the base most personnel never see. She glanced around to ensure we were alone. Including potentially Site F, my heart raced. What should I do? Proceed as planned with Granger. Then accept the assignment without question. Observe everything, remember everything, but don't ask questions. Not yet. She handed me a small object, what looked like a standard military USB drive. Storage device disguised as standard issue. It will record automatically when inserted into any port. If you find a computer terminal, use it. I pocketed it, my mouth dry. And if it's a trap? Then remember your training and deny everything. She checked her watch. Go back to your barracks now. Act surprised when the orders come through. And Torres? Her eyes met mine. Be ready to run if things go sideways. She melted back into the shadows, leaving me alone with the weight of her warning. Be ready to run. From the United States Army. From the only life I'd known since enlisting. The orders came exactly as she'd predicted, hand-delivered by Lieutenant Cooper at 800 sharp. Special training assignment, 3-week duration, minimum communication with regular units. Report to Training Complex B at 1,000 hours with standard field kit. Congratulations, Torres, Cooper said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This is a real opportunity. Thank you, sir, I replied, matching his false enthusiasm. Any idea what kind of training? Above my clearance, he said smoothly. Just follow orders and you'll be fine. As he walked away, I noticed Specialist Diaz watching from across the room, his expression unreadable. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away. I packed methodically, my mind racing. I still had my meeting with Tommy at 1400. The timing would be tight. I'd need to find a way to slip away from whatever this special training entailed. At 0955, I reported to Training Complex B with my gear. 6 other soldiers were already there, none from my unit, all looking equally confused and excited. An opportunity, they thought. A chance to prove themselves. I wondered how many of them would survive it. Training Complex B was a sprawling concrete structure on the eastern edge of Camp Ravenhill. Unlike the main training facilities, it had few windows and multiple security checkpoints. I'd been there once before for specialized weapons training, but never beyond the main floor. Today, we were led deeper. Welcome to Advanced Tactical Operations, announced a captain I'd never seen before. Jenkins, according to his nameplate. Mid-30s, with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen combat up close. You 7 have been selected based on your skills, adaptability, and discretion. He emphasized that last word, scanning our faces as if searching for weakness. For the next 3 weeks, you don't exist to the rest of the base. Your regular duties have been reassigned. Your communications will be limited to this unit. You will train, eat, and sleep as a team. A private behind me shifted nervously. I remained still, expression neutral, even as my mind calculated escape routes and timetables. I needed to make my meeting with Tommy. Missing it would raise red flags, both for him and, potentially for Maddox if he was having me watched. Captain Jenkins continued, your first briefing is at 1100 hours. Until then, get settled in your assigned quarters. Specialist Davis will show you the way. We followed Davis, a wiry man with the perpetual squint of someone who spends too much time staring at screens, through a maze of corridors to a barracks area I hadn't known existed. Small rooms with 2 bunks each, sparse but private by military standards. Assignments on the door, Davis said flatly. Mess is down the hall. Be ready at 10:45. I checked the room assignments. I was sharing with a specialist Kim from communications. She nodded at me as we entered our room. Early 20s, serious expression, few words. Perfect. I needed space to think. I'm going to grab coffee, I told her after stowing my gear. Want anything? I'm good, she replied, already organizing her footlocker with military precision. The mess hall was empty except for a lone cook preparing lunch. I poured coffee and checked my watch. 10:22. Less than 4 hours until my meeting with Tommy, and no clear way to make it happen. As I considered my options, Captain Jenkins appeared beside me. Pouring his own coffee. Torres, he acknowledged. Settling in? Yes, sir, I replied automatically. He stirred sugar into his cup, not looking at me. Your record is impressive. Expert marksman. Top scores in tactical assessment. Commendations for leadership under pressure. Thank you, sir. Also noted, close association with Corporal Ruiz before her accident. Now he looked at me directly. Tragic that. You have my condolences. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. Thank you, sir. General Maddox speaks highly of your potential. Says you remind him of your father. There it was again, the reference to my father. A reminder that they knew who I was, where I came from. A subtle threat wrapped in a compliment. I never had the honor of serving with my father, I said carefully. But I try to live up to his example. Jenkins nodded. Family legacy is important in the military. Bonds of loyalty, tradition. He sipped his coffee. The general believes you understand those bonds better than most. Was this recruitment or assessment? I couldn't tell. I do my best to honor my commitments, sir. Good. He checked his watch. Briefing in 20. Don't be late. As he walked away, my mind raced. I needed to get word to Tommy to reschedule our meeting. But how? We were effectively isolated here, our movements restricted, our communications monitored. The briefing was exactly what I expected. Vague descriptions of advanced tactical scenarios and specialized equipment training, with heavy emphasis on security protocols. No phones allowed beyond the barracks area. No unauthorized absences. No discussion of our activities with anyone outside the unit. By 1300, it was clear I wouldn't make the meeting. We were deep into equipment issue. Tactical gear I'd never seen before, with modifications that weren't standard Army. The kind of equipment that doesn't officially exist. This is a prototype combat system, explained the tech specialist, a civilian contractor named Reeves. Integrated communications, enhanced targeting, and biomonitoring. You'll be the first field unit to test it under realistic conditions. Realistic conditions where? Asked Corporal Mendez, one of our group. That's covered in tomorrow's briefing, Captain Jenkins interjected smoothly. For now, focus on familiarization. As we examined the equipment, I noticed something odd about the manufacturer's markings, or rather, the lack thereof. Standard military gear carries identifiers, contract numbers, date codes. This had none of that. Instead, each piece bore a simple logo, a stylized mountain peak with the letters BS beneath it. Blackridge Security, the private military contractor Tommy had mentioned, whose personnel had been with Mandy the night she died. My suspicions deepened. This wasn't standard advanced training. We were being prepared for something outside normal military operations. At 14:30, during a brief break, I made my move. Complaining of a headache, I asked permission to return to barracks for aspirin. Captain Jenkins hesitated, then nodded. Be back in 10, Torres. Yes, sir. Once out of sight, I moved quickly through the corridors, searching for a landline phone. Most modern military facilities still maintained hardwired communications for emergencies. If I could find one, I might be able to get a message out. 3 minutes of searching brought me to a small administrative office, unoccupied. A desktop phone sat on the cluttered desk. I dialed the coffee shop where Tommy would be waiting, hoping someone would answer. Mountainside Coffee, how can I help you? A bored female voice. I need to leave a message for an older gentleman who might be sitting alone, possibly wearing a green jacket, I said quickly. The homeless vet? Yeah, he's been here a while. Keeps checking his watch. Relief flooded through me. Please tell him his niece can't make it today. Family emergency. She'll call when she can. Whatever, the barista sighed. I'll tell him. Thank you. I hung up, praying Tommy would understand and not assume the worst. Returning to the training area with seconds to spare, I found the group being divided into pairs for equipment testing. Captain Jenkins paired me with Specialist Kim, whether by coincidence or design I couldn't tell. Today is just familiarization, he explained. Tomorrow we begin practical exercises. For the next 4 hours, we learned the new systems, communications headsets with enhanced encryption, tactical vests with integrated biomonitoring, weapons with targeting systems I'd never seen before. Advanced, expensive, and definitely not standard issue for regular Army units. By evening, my head was spinning with information and questions. We ate dinner as a unit, conversation minimal and guarded. Everyone sensed the unusual nature of our assignment, but no one dared question it directly. Back in our room, Specialist Kim finally spoke more than 2 words together. Have you heard about this place? She asked quietly, sitting on her bunk. What place? This section of the base. The lower levels. She glanced at the door. There are rumors. I kept my expression neutral. What kind of rumors? That there are tunnels underneath. Old mining shafts converted for something. Some guys in my previous unit called it the basement. She shrugged. Probably just stories, the basement. Site F, same place, different name. Why would they bring us here for standard advanced training? I asked, testing her. Kim's eyes met mine. Exactly. Nothing about this is standard. I was about to press further when a knock interrupted us. Captain Jenkins stood in the doorway. Torres, he said. The general would like a word. My blood ran cold. Now, sir? Now. Kim's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing as I followed Jenkins out. We walked in silence through corridors that seemed to descend gradually, the air growing cooler with each turn. The general values personal connections, Jenkins said suddenly, particularly with the children of soldiers he respected. I remained silent, focusing on memorizing our route. Left turn, right turn, down a short flight of stairs, through a heavy security door requiring Jenkins' keycard and retinal scan. Your father saved his life. Did you know that? Baghdad, 2003. Took a bullet meant for then Colonel Maddox. I hadn't known. My father rarely spoke of his deployments, and after his death, those stories died with him. No, sir. He didn't talk much about his service, Jenkins nodded. Humble man. The best soldiers usually are. We reached another security door, heavier, with additional verification systems. Beyond it lay a corridor hewn from natural rock, reinforced with metal supports. A tunnel. Just like in the footage of Mandy. Welcome to the basement, Torres, Jenkins said, watching my reaction carefully. Few get to see this part of Ravenhill. I kept my face impassive, though my heart hammered in my chest. I'm honored by the trust, sir. It's not my trust you need to worry about, he replied cryptically. At the end of the tunnel was a modern office setup that seemed jarringly out of place against the rock walls. General Maddox sat behind a glass desk studying a tablet. He looked up as we entered, his face breaking into a warm smile that didn't reach his eyes. Corporal Torres, he greeted me standing. Thank you for joining me. That will be all, Captain. Jenkins nodded and left, closing the door behind him. I stood at attention, fighting to keep my breathing steady. At ease, Corporal, Maddox said. Please sit. I took the offered chair, hyper-aware of every movement, every expression. I knew your father well, he began, studying me. David was one of the finest soldiers I ever had the privilege to command. His integrity was unmatched. Thank you, sir. I've followed your career with interest. You have his talent, his instincts. He leaned forward slightly. But I wonder if you have his loyalty. The question hung in the air between us. A test, a trap, a threat. I strive to, sir, I answered carefully. Maddox nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good, because loyalty is what brought you here today. Loyalty to your country, to your oath, to the mission, he paused. And perhaps to the memory of Corporal Ruiz. My pulse jumped at Mandy's name, but I kept my expression neutral. Mandy was a good soldier, sir. She was, he agreed. But she became confused about certain priorities, about the greater good. He was watching me intently now, measuring every reaction. This wasn't just a conversation, it was an interrogation disguised as a recruitment. The work we do here, Corporal, exists in a gray area. Not because it's wrong, but because bureaucracy and politics haven't caught up to the realities of modern warfare. He gestured to the rock walls around us. We operate below the surface, literally and figuratively, because that's where America's enemies are. In the shadows. In the gray? I understand, sir. Do you? His eyes narrowed slightly. Then perhaps you can explain why you've been meeting with a disgraced former soldier who has made it his mission to undermine everything we're building. Here, my training kicked in, the part they drill into you about interrogation resistance. Admit what they already know, deny what they can't prove, redirect when possible. Sir, I encountered a homeless veteran outside the base. He claimed to know things about Mandy's death that didn't match the official report. I held Maddox's gaze. As her friend, I felt I owed it to her to listen. Maddox leaned back, his expression unreadable. And what did Thomas Granger tell you exactly? The use of Tommy's full name confirmed what I already suspected. Maddox had been tracking him, perhaps for years. He shared conspiracy theories, sir. Claims about black ops, unauthorized missions. I shook my head, the picture of a dutiful soldier troubled by disloyal accusations. It seemed like the ramblings of someone with a grudge. Yet you agreed to meet him again, Maddox said softly. So he knew about the note under the bench. How much more did he know? To tell him I wasn't interested, sir. I realized after our first meeting that engaging with him could compromise my position. The lie came easily, wrapped in enough truth to sound convincing. Mandy's death hit me hard, but I'm still a soldier. My loyalty is to the army. Maddox studied me for a long moment, then smiled, a predator's smile that didn't reach his eyes. I believe you, Rachel. May I call you Rachel? Without waiting for an answer, he continued. Your father would be proud of your discernment. Not everyone understands the necessities of modern warfare. He stood, gesturing for me to follow him to a wall-mounted screen. With a few taps on his tablet, the screen came to life, displaying what looked like aerial footage of a compound in desert terrain. 3 months ago, this terrorist cell was planning an attack on U.S. soil. Intelligence confirmed it, but the target was unclear. They operated in a sovereign nation that officially prohibits U.S. military action within its borders. He paused the footage. Conventional channels would have meant diplomatic requests, information sharing with potentially compromised local forces, weeks of delay. The footage resumed, now showing what was clearly a precision strike. The compound erupted in a series of controlled explosions that seemed to target specific buildings while leaving others intact. We neutralized the threat in under 48 hours. No American casualties. Minimal collateral damage. No international incident. Maddox turned to me. This is what we do here, Rachel. We protect our country when conventional means would fail. The prototype equipment, I said, understanding dawning. It's for these kinds of operations. Precisely. Operations that require deniability, speed, and precision. He switched off the screen. Blackridge Security provides us with logistical support and occasionally personnel with specialized skills. They operate outside traditional military constraints, useful for situations requiring maximum flexibility. It was a masterful presentation framing what was clearly illegal activity as patriotic necessity. I could almost believe it, almost see how Mandy might have been a casualty of a greater purpose, almost. Why tell me this, sir? I asked. This seems well above my clearance level. Because I'm offering you a choice, Rachel. The same choice I offered your friend. His voice hardened slightly. Mandy discovered aspects of our operation. Rather than report what she didn't understand, I invited her to join us to see the full picture. And she refused, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Maddox sighed. She couldn't see past her narrow interpretation of regulations. Couldn't understand that sometimes protecting American lives means operating in gray areas, so her death wasn't an accident. The words escaped before I could stop them. Her death was tragic and unnecessary. Maddox replied, his voice gentle now, almost regretful. She threatened to expose operations that would have saved countless American lives. She left us no choice. The casual admission stunned me. He wasn't even denying it anymore. He was justifying murder as patriotic necessity. I'm offering you a different path, Rachel. Join us. Be part of something that matters beyond regulations and bureaucracy. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Your father understood this kind of service. The kind that doesn't come with public medals but saves American lives nonetheless. I thought of Major Bishop's warning, of Tommy's evidence, of Mandy's face the last time I saw her alive. I need time to process this, sir, I said finally. Of course. He removed his hand. You're scheduled for field training tomorrow. Experience our methods firsthand. See the results. Then decide. His eyes hardened. But understand, this conversation remains classified. Any discussion with unauthorized personnel would constitute treason. I understand, sir. Good. The warmth returned to his expression. Captain Jenkins will escort you back to your quarters. Rest well, Corporal. Tomorrow will be illuminating. Jenkins appeared as if summoned, leading me back through the labyrinthine tunnels in silence. My mind raced, processing Maddox's revelations and calculating my next move. Back in my room, Specialist Kim was already asleep, or pretending to be. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, the weight of Maddox's confession pressing down on me. He had admitted to killing Mandy. Not directly, not in those words, but the implication was unmistakable. And he had done so because he believed I would join him, that I would choose the same greater good he served. I needed to get this information to Bishop and Tommy. But how? We were isolated, monitored, trapped in a secure facility with no clear way out. Morning came too soon. We were roused at 0500, issued the prototype gear, and loaded onto unmarked transport helicopters by 0600. No briefing, no explanation of our destination. Just Captain Jenkins's terse instructions to prepare for field evaluation. The helicopter flight lasted nearly 2 hours, most of it over rugged mountain terrain. When we finally landed, it was in a remote valley I didn't recognize. A small compound of temporary structures had been erected, training facilities designed to simulate an urban environment. Welcome to Site R, Jenkins announced as we disembarked. Your testing ground for the next 72 hours. The day passed in a blur of tactical exercises, room clearing, hostage scenarios, surveillance operations. The equipment performed flawlessly, giving us capabilities I'd never experienced before. Enhanced vision in darkness, targeting systems that could identify friendlies through walls. Communication that remained clear despite interference. It was impressive. Revolutionary, even. and entirely unauthorized for standard military use, I was certain. By evening, I'd earned approving nods from both Jenkins and the Blackridge contractors overseeing our training. I played the role perfectly. The dedicated soldier, impressed by the technology, honored to be selected. After dinner, we were gathered for a briefing. Jenkins stood before a digital map display, outlining tomorrow's exercise. At 800, you'll conduct a raid on a simulated terrorist cell, he explained, highlighting a section of the compound. Live ammunition, full tactical protocols. Blackridge personnel will play the opposition force. Rules of engagement, sir? Asked Corporal Mendez. Standard counter-terrorism protocols, Jenkins replied. Hostiles are to be neutralized. Any civilians encountered are to be secured and evacuated. Standard language, but something in his tone made me uneasy. There was an undercurrent I couldn't quite identify. Later, as we prepared our gear for the morning, Specialist Kim approached me. Something's off about tomorrow's exercise, she murmured, checking her weapon. What do you mean? The Blackridge guys. They've been talking. This isn't just an equipment test. She glanced around to ensure we weren't overheard. I think there might be actual detainees on site. My blood ran cold. Detainees? You mean prisoners? I don't know, but I heard them discussing packages and extraction protocols. Her eyes met mine. Why would a training exercise need extraction protocols? Before I could respond, Captain Jenkins entered the barracks. Lights out in 10. Everyone get some rest. Tomorrow will be demanding. That night, sleep eluded me. If Kim was right, we weren't just testing equipment. We were preparing for an actual operation. An illegal operation involving prisoners held without due process on American soil. I needed to act. But how? We were isolated under constant surveillance, with no way to communicate with the outside world. Then I remembered the USB drive Bishop had given me. It was still in my pocket, untested, and potentially our only link to the outside. At 300, I slipped from my bunk and made my way to the command tent. The night watch consisted of a single Blackridge contractor, half asleep at his post. I nodded to him as I entered. Couldn't sleep, I explained. Thought I'd review the tactical layouts again. He grunted acknowledgement, returning to his magazine. The tent contained several computer terminals, the command and control system for tomorrow's operation. If I could access one, insert Bishop's drive. Don't mind me, I said casually, sitting at an unoccupied terminal. Just want to familiarize myself with the terrain again. The contractor barely looked up. Knock yourself out. Passwords taped under the keyboard. Sloppy security. Beneficial for me, concerning for a supposedly clandestine operation. I logged in, pulled up the tactical maps as cover, and carefully inserted Bishop's USB drive into a port at the back of the terminal. No indication appeared on screen. Either it wasn't working, or it was designed to operate silently. For 20 minutes, I studied the maps, occasionally making notes, playing the role of the dedicated soldier preparing for tomorrow's mission. All the while, I prayed the drive was doing its job, capturing whatever data flowed through this system. When I finally returned to my bunk, dawn was approaching. In a few hours, we would conduct what I now suspected was a rehearsal for an illegal black op, and I had no way to stop it without exposing myself. As we geared up after breakfast, I made my decision. I would participate in the exercise, gather as much information as possible, and find a way to get it to Bishop as soon as we returned to base. It was a risk, but the only option I had. Final checks, Jenkins called out as we assembled outside the command tent. This is a live-fire exercise. Treat it as a real operation. We moved out in formation, approaching the target area from multiple angles. Through my enhanced tactical display, I could see heat signatures inside the buildings, the Blackridge personnel playing our opposition. But something wasn't right. The movement patterns weren't those of people playing roles in an exercise. They were defensive, agitated, real. Team 2 in position, came Mendez's voice through our comms. Team 1 ready, I confirmed. Execute, ordered Jenkins from the command post. We breached the main building simultaneously from multiple entry points, just as we'd trained. Inside, chaos erupted. The opposition fought back with unexpected ferocity. These weren't contractors playing roles. They were genuinely fighting for their lives. What the hell? Muttered Kim beside me as we cleared a corridor. This isn't right. We entered what appeared to be a holding area. 3 men in civilian clothes were handcuffed to metal chairs, bearing signs of interrogation. Their eyes widened in terror as we entered. Please, one of them said in accented English. We are not terrorists. We are journalists. My world tilted on its axis. This wasn't a training exercise. It was an actual raid on an actual black site. And we were the unwitting participants. Kim looked at me, the same realization dawning in her eyes. Torres, what do we do? Before I could answer, Jenkins's voice came through our comms. All teams, complete your objectives and proceed to extraction. Ignore any communication attempts from the targets. Targets. Not role players. Not opposition force. Targets. In that moment, I made my choice. Kim watched the door. Don't let anyone in. I moved to the nearest prisoner, examining his restraints. Who are you? Why are you here? Mahmoud Khalil, reporter for Al Jazeera. We were investigating claims of CIA black sites on American soil. His voice was raspy, dehydrated. They took us 3 days ago. No charges. No calls, journalists, not terrorists. Prisoners held illegally on American soil. Torres, we've got company, Kim warned, positioning herself by the door. Jenkins is heading this way with a Black Ridge team. I made my decision in an instant. Kim, these are civilians, journalists. This isn't a training exercise, it's an illegal detention. To her credit, she didn't hesitate. What's the play? Secure the prisoners, extract them to the helicopter. I'll create a diversion. That's insane. They'll court-martial us both. Or worse. They killed Mandy for discovering this, I said, the truth finally crystallizing. I won't let them continue. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She nodded once, then moved to cover the door. Jenkins approaching, she warned. 30 seconds, I drew my sidearm, heart pounding. When I engage them, get the prisoners to the extraction point. There's a major at base, Lauren Bishop. Find her. Tell her Mandy was right. Kim's eyes widened, but she nodded. What about you? I'll be right behind you. It was a lie. We both knew it. The next few minutes passed in a blur of tactical decisions and controlled chaos. As Jenkins entered with his Black Ridge security team, I created the diversion we needed, a misidentification that led to a standoff, giving Kim precious seconds to move the journalists toward the extraction point. Torres, stand down, Jenkins ordered, his weapon trained on me. That's an order. These are civilians, sir, I replied, keeping my tone professional, my weapon lowered but ready. Journalists. This violates every ROE we have. This is a classified operation, Corporal. Your job is to follow orders, not question them. His eyes hardened. Don't throw away your career, your life, over a misunderstanding. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. Mandy had discovered this. Maddox's private army, conducting illegal operations, detaining civilians without due process. She'd refused to be part of it. And they'd killed her for it. Sir? I cannot in good conscience participate in the unlawful detention of civilians, I stated. The words of the military code of conduct I'd sworn to uphold. Jenkins's expression shifted from anger to something like regret. You're making the same mistake she did. Behind him, I could see his Black Ridge team spreading out, flanking me. They weren't here to talk. They were here to neutralize a problem, just like they had with Mandy. What happened next would later be described in multiple conflicting reports. Official records would call it a training accident. Black Ridge internal documents would label it an operational security breach. Major Bishop's report to the Pentagon Inspector General would name it for what it was. The moment the truth finally broke free, I created an opening for Kim and the journalist to reach the helicopter. In the confusion that followed, shots were fired. I took one to the shoulder, another grazed my side. But I kept moving, determined to reach the extraction point. What I didn't know then was that Kim had made contact with the pilot, a regular Army officer who had no idea what kind of operation he was supporting. When faced with the truth and physical evidence in the form of 3 clearly abused journalists, he made the same choice I had. By the time I reached the landing zone, bleeding and surrounded by Black Ridge operatives, the helicopter was already lifting off, carrying Kim, the journalists, and something even more valuable, the USB drive, now filled with irrefutable evidence of Maddox's illegal operation. Stand down, Torres, Jenkins shouted over the roar of the departing helicopter. It's over. I raised my hand slowly, letting my weapon fall. You're right, Captain, it is over. Just not the way you think. They took me back to the command tent where Maddox himself had arrived via a second helicopter. His face was a mask of controlled fury as Jenkins explained the situation. You've made a grave mistake, Corporal, Maddox said, his voice deceptively calm. interfering with a classified counterterrorism operation, aiding potential enemy combatants. The penalties for such actions are severe. Those men were journalists, sir, I replied, wincing as a medic roughly bandaged my shoulder. American citizens among them. This entire operation violates U.S. law and military regulations. Your friend made similar accusations, he said softly. Before her unfortunate accident, the threat was unmistakable. I was looking at my own death sentence, dressed up as another training mishap. But something Maddox didn't know. While creating the diversion, I'd activated the emergency beacon in my tactical vest, the one piece of the prototype equipment that connected directly to regular military channels. If anyone was monitoring those frequencies, they would know something had gone very wrong at a location that officially didn't exist. You think you're being noble, Maddox continued. Just like Ruiz, but you're just being naive. The world doesn't work according to the rules they teach at West Point. With respect, sir, if the rules don't matter, then what are we fighting for? His expression hardened. Take her to the secure holding area. We'll deal with this back at Ravenhill. As they led me away, I caught a glimpse of the command tent's tactical display. Multiple aircraft were approaching our position, aircraft that weren't part of Maddox's operation. Someone had received the emergency signal. Someone was coming. The next few hours passed in a haze of pain and uncertainty. They kept me isolated, under guard, as the camp was hastily dismantled around me. I could hear shouted orders, the roar of engines, the unmistakable sounds of an operation being abandoned. Then, unexpectedly, gunfire. Not the controlled bursts of a training exercise, but the chaotic exchange of a real firefight. My guard tensed, listening to his radio. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Stay put," he ordered, securing my restraints to the chair before moving to the door. The moment he left, I began working on the restraints. The pain in my shoulder made it difficult, but years of training took over. Focus on the task. Ignore the pain. Find the weakness. The door burst open just as I freed one hand. Not my guard, but a figure in standard army tactical gear. Corporal Torres. The soldier lowered his weapon slightly. "Yes," I managed, still working on my second restraint. "Major Bishop sent us." "Are you mobile, Bishop?" She'd received the signal. Somehow, she'd mobilized a legitimate military response. "I can move," I said, finally freeing my other hand. "What's happening?" "Official military police operation," the soldier replied, helping me to my feet. "General Maddox and his personnel are being detained pending investigation." Outside the scene was one of controlled chaos. Military police had secured the perimeter. Blackridge contractors were being processed and detained. In the distance, I could see Maddox himself. Surrounded by MPs, his face a mask of cold fury. A medical team approached. But before they could reach me, a familiar figure pushed through the crowd. "Torres." Major Bishop's normally composed expression showed relief. "You made it. The journalists?" I asked. "Safe. Already providing statements to the Inspector General's team." She glanced at my injuries. "You need medical attention." "What I need is to know this was worth it," I said, the adrenaline fading, the pain intensifying. "That Mandy didn't die for nothing," Bishop's expression softened. "It was worth it. The USB drive contained everything. Operational plans, illegal detentions, off-books financing. And the journalist's testimony will make it impossible to bury." She placed a hand gently on my uninjured shoulder. "Maddox is finished. So is Blackridge. And Tommy Granger? Is he safe? He's waiting at the hospital. Worried sick about you." A small smile crossed her face. For a paranoid conspiracy theorist, he's surprisingly sentimental. The medical team reached us then, easing me onto a stretcher despite my protests that I could walk. As they carried me toward a waiting helicopter, Bishop walked alongside. "There will be hearings," she warned. "Investigations. Some people will call you a traitor for exposing this. And you? What do you call me?" Her answer was simple but meant everything. A soldier. One who remembered her oath when it mattered most. The aftermath unfolded over months, not days. Congressional hearings? Military tribunals. Media coverage that painted me alternately as a whistleblower hero or a naive traitor. General Maddox faced court-martial along with several officers in his command. Blackridge Security was disbanded, its contracts revoked, its executives facing federal charges. Through it all, I told the same story. The truth about Mandy. About a general who believed his ends justified any means. About soldiers faced with the hardest choice: follow orders or follow their conscience. Some called me brave. Others called me foolish. The Army, in its infinite bureaucratic wisdom, split the difference, honorably discharging me on medical grounds while awarding me a commendation that would never appear in any public record. 6 months after that day at Site R, I stood at Mandy's grave. The official marker still read training accident, but everyone now knew the truth. Beside me stood Tommy Granger, no longer homeless, his veterans' benefits restored, his name cleared. "She'd be proud of you," he said quietly. Standing up like that, finishing what she started. "I should have believed her sooner," I replied, the familiar guilt surfacing. "When she first came to me with her concerns." I brushed her off. "You believed her when it counted," Tommy said. "That's what matters in the end." Major Bishop, now Lieutenant Colonel Bishop, had offered me a position with her new task force, investigating similar abuses of power within military channels. I'd declined. My fight was over. I'd done my part. Instead, I'd established a support network for veterans and active duty personnel struggling with ethical dilemmas in service. We called it Mandy's Line, a place where soldiers could speak freely about the gray areas, the difficult choices, the moments when duty and conscience collided. As we left the cemetery, I noticed a figure watching from a distance, Specialist Kim, now working with Bishop's task force. She nodded once in recognition before turning away. We rarely spoke about that day, but the bond remained. Some experiences create connections that transcend words. Back in my apartment, I opened the folder Tommy had first given me that rainy day outside Camp Ravenhill. Inside were all the pieces he'd pieced together over years. The pattern that no one would believe until it was almost too late. And behind it all, the photograph Mandy had kept on her desk, the two of us in basic training, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing at some forgotten joke. On the back, she'd written, "Battle Buddies." No matter what, I traced the words with my finger. "No matter what," I whispered. Some say the military teaches you to follow orders without question. But the best soldiers know that's not the whole truth. The military teaches you to recognize when orders conflict with the very principles you swore to defend. It teaches you that true loyalty isn't to any individual or operation. It's to the Constitution, to your fellow soldiers, to the innocent civilians counting on you to remember your humanity even in the most inhumane situations. Mandy knew that. She died for it. The least I could do was live by it. I placed the photo back in the folder and closed it. The past would always be there, but it no longer defined my future. I had a new mission now, ensuring that soldiers like Mandy would never again stand alone when faced with impossible choices. That night, I dreamed of her. Not falling, as in my nightmares, but standing tall, smiling, at peace. When I woke, the weight I'd carried since her death had finally lifted. The truth about Mandy was known. Justice, however imperfect, had been served. And somewhere, I like to think, she was proud that her battle buddy had finally found her way home.